So is a virus the same as bacteria?
Yeah, that's something that people, the general public, gets confused about a lot. Both viruses and bacteria cause disease, or don't necessarily cause disease, but many of them do. But they're not the same thing. So a bacteria is a cell. A virus is not a cell.
So it's got a membrane around it.
Right. So some viruses have membranes, but they're decidedly not cells. So one of the favorite things that virologists, who are people who study viruses, like to argue about is whether viruses are living or dead.
Now, I remember that discussion when I was an undergraduate. We never resolved it.
Yeah, it's sort of like a perpetual debate among people who study viruses. And my personal opinion is it doesn't really matter. They are what they are. And whether or not we...
But the big thing is they can't live alone.
Right, they cannot live alone. So one definition that some people like to use of viruses is obligate intracellular parasite. So that means...
Obligate intracellular parasite.
Right.
What's that?
So that means that a simpler way to say that is that viruses need cells. So a virus can do nothing without a cell to infect. And like I said earlier, viruses hijack cells, they take them over, and use the resources and machinery of the cell to make copies of themselves.
So what would be an analogy kind of in modern life or something?
This is probably, I don't want, maybe a facile analogy, but in some ways it's a really good analogy, is that computer viruses. Mm-hmm. So a computer virus in and of itself isn't anything. Right. However, a computer virus infecting a computer now can have a very big effect.
Takes over and does stuff for itself and its creators, and wrecks the computer's normal function.
Right. By reprogramming the computer to do something that it was not intended to do originally. So
viruses do something like that?
Absolutely. So viruses, the analogy between a virus and a cell is the same as a computer virus and a computer. Mm-hmm. So a virus, when it infects a cell, reprograms the cell and disrupts its normal functioning with the whole goal of making additional copies of itself. And the effects of that can be profound. It can kill the cell, it can trigger a big immune response and cause huge disease. So that, I think it's actually like a fairly good analogy.
Neat. How many different kinds of viruses are there?
It's sort of a fascinating question. There's more than you could possibly believe. So I'll give you one estimate. So one estimate is that there's in the world there's 50,000 different vertebrates. So that's
that's a lot.
That's a lot. But there's an enormous diversity of life. Some people have made a conservative estimate that each vertebrate has 20 different viruses, which is probably a really big underestimate of the number of viruses there are. So if there's 50,000 vertebrates and each has 20 distinct viruses, then that means there's 1 million vertebrate viruses, of which we've characterized...
20 distinct viruses?
Yeah, 20 distinct viruses.
Whoa.
So in humans, there's HIV, there's Ebola, there's influenza virus.
So the ones that cause cold sores.
Right, and there's hundreds of different human viruses that cause cold sores. So saying that each organism only has 20 distinct viruses is a very, very big underestimate of the number of viruses there are. But just among vertebrates, which is just one small fraction of all of the diversity of life, there's probably at least 1 million different viruses.
Wow. Let's go on in a second and try to figure out why we all don't have terrible viral illnesses all the time.